Well, I must say, I was just listening to National Public Radio and to a report from the Middle East, in particular from Yemen, as well as from Syria. And the question that the journalist asked was, what's causing the protests? What's causing the unrest in all of these countries, including Libya, of course, Egypt before that, Jordan, and Tunisia, Bahrain. So there are, at least 6 countries, probably more, in that part of the world where stability is sort of shaking, and you see lots of people in the streets, in the mosques, and other places protesting. The answer that the reporter gave was that the protests are partly about sort of suppression of freedom of speech and sort of political rights, but that really the problem is unemployment, the fact that there are a lot of people who in many cases even have an education, have a university degree, and are trained in something, who can't find any jobs, or if they do find jobs, the jobs do not correspond to their level of education. The jobs don't pay, what you would expect reasonably for people with technical degrees, with degrees in economics and engineering and business and accounting and so on ought to be making, because very often they're not even working in the areas where they got their education. They're working selling things to tourists or driving taxi cabs or doing other jobs for which you really need almost no education at all. I've heard that now so many times. I've heard it about young, educated Japanese. That was before the earthquake and the tsunami and the nuclear power reactor crisis. I've heard it about India. I've even heard it about China, and certainly other countries in the world, many of the Latin American countries as well, where we have people who are pretty well educated, and yet the economies simply are not producing sufficient jobs so that people feel that they're being compensated properly. Now, my question is, have economists actually tried to model out whether there are, let's call it, limits to high-level jobs, whether there are limits to how much university education and formal education is actually required in most societies in the world to employ people and make them at least feel that they are, reasonably being compensated for whatever level of education they have and how much they've invested in that. I don't know if the economists have properly addressed this, because we certainly to some extent are facing the problem in the United States, and I don't know if politicians have sufficiently addressed the issue either. As we look at job creation and so on, it almost seems as though the possibility of people finding work and working in areas that are compatible with their expectations is an accidental process, is a sort of random process that depends on how much the economy manages to produce things that people want to buy and that people do buy, and that is, in the sense of the invisible hand of the market, a sort of highly unpredictable and pretty risky set of forces that determine jobs and from that political stability and social satisfaction. Obviously the solution in some of the Middle Eastern countries, in Yemen, North African countries and so on, is to discover a way to employ people so that they don't feel alienated, employ people so that they feel a sense of personal dignity, employ people, and find ways for people to have vocations and and something to do every day that generates income for them, so that they can both live a let's call it a decent life, and also have that personal sense of satisfaction that they get up in the morning and get dressed and go and do something that they can tell their children and others about, rather than hanging around unemployed and feeling basically useless and inadequate. That crisis isn't going to be solved by cruise missiles, if you'll pardon the expression there. And we don't seem to be generating really any imaginative solutions to how we can help these countries, whether we like their regimes or not, create an environment in which stability and satisfaction takes place. Stefan Schmidt for InsiderIowa.com.